So the other day, some Federalist Society legal scholars, now that's a very right-wing group, mind you, they argued, listen, Trump is not even legally allowed to run for office. Why? Because there's a provision of the Constitution that very clearly says if you attempt an insurrection against the United States of America, you can't hold any elected office. Now, keep in mind, I want to stress this. This is not a progressive or liberal or leftist legal scholar. These are, and it's actually multiple conservative legal scholars who are now coming out and saying, Donald Trump is not gonna be able to become president again. Like, it is legally not allowed. Okay, so here we have, let's hear this guy out. Here's the headline in Mediaite. They say legal expert predicts challenges to Trump's right to appear on the ballot based on conservative interpretation of the 14th Amendment. So let's hear him out, and then we'll talk a little more about it.
And yesterday I had a chance to talk to two constitutional scholars. Perhaps you've seen some of this. And they argue that because of Trump's actions to overturn the 2020 election, that he is already disqualified from being president again under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Let's listen to this and talk about it on the other side.
That language in the Constitution, Jim, simply could not be any clearer. It is unmistakable in its application to the former president. The only thing that was not known until Professors Baud and Paulson did their scholarly work is whether this was the actual meaning under the original understanding of the Constitution.
So let me just point out, the argument they're making is, if you do a plain-face reading, a plain-face interpretation of the letters and words on the page, then Trump is not allowed to run for office again. That's what he's saying. But he's also saying the only question that's up in the air is whether or not the founders meant for it to be interpreted in the way that they are interpreting it right now. So that's the legal landscape here.
When they talk, people listen. When you talk, people listen, Norm. What's your sense of it?
Professor Tribe and Judge Ludig are friends and colleagues of mine. There's been so much trauma for the nation since January 6th on, but how fantastic that you have one of the preeminent liberal legal scholars and one of the preeminent conservative ones coming together. And here I agree with them. The 14th of the Amendment of the Constitution, Section 3, says that you're not eligible to hold office in the United States if you commit insurrection or you give aid and comfort to insurrectionists. And there is such powerful evidence adduced by the January 6th committee out in plain sight of that proposition. And now we have these two conservative scholars who published a very important law review article, Baud and Paulson, saying that's what the founders and framers of the country believed as well. So I think we're going to see very substantial legal challenges to Donald Trump's right to appear on an election ballot.
So look, my question would be, who exactly is going to have what's called standing to bring those lawsuits? Is it like the top election officials in various states when Trump gets his name on the ballot? Is that who's going to bring it? Well, what if it's a Republican Trump supporter who's in charge of an election in various states? I mean, obviously they wouldn't bring the challenge. Are you saying it's going to be, Democratic heads of the election? It's certainly not going to be, the RNC is not going to bring that lawsuit. I guess I'm struggling to figure out who exactly would have standing in this instance. Now, I don't know. Maybe they have a good answer for that. I don't know. But there's a bunch of questions that I'd like to ask these people. So first, let's actually read this part of the Constitution. So this is the 14th Amendment, Equal Protection and Other Rights. So this is 14th Amendment, Section 3, and it's disqualification from holding office. They say, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector or president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as any executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So that's interesting. They're saying, well, if you support, it seems like what it reads like to me is they're saying, well, if you supported an insurrection, you can't hold elected office. But if Congress decides by a vote of 2/3 to allow you to do it, well, then you can do it, right? That's one way of reading it. The original interpretation I had of it was I thought you needed 2/3 of Congress to vote saying you can't run. That, like, they would have to verify it. That was my original interpretation. The way I'm reading it now, it seems to be the opposite. They're saying Congress can remove such disability, they say. So in other words, if Congress decides we don't care that you try to do an insurrection, that's fine. But, like, my biggest question is, are you sure that they don't need a conviction over an insurrection-related crime? Right? That's the thing that I'm struggling with. Because to me, because you could just say anybody tried to commit an insurrection and then somebody would be disqualified from running for office, right? So don't you need a conviction to do it? Now, in the case of Trump, I happen to think, of course, that he fed the riot. He wanted to do an insurrection. It's very clear he wanted to stay in office. There's no doubt about that. But if you don't get a conviction for the crime of insurrection, then I don't know if this would be legally binding. But here's the thing, man. I'd love to ask these questions to these conservative legal scholars to see what they have to say. But if they're right, maybe we will get some legitimate lawsuits where they're trying to kick him off the ballot. Maybe they will do that. Will that hold up in our largely conservative courts? I don't know. It's conservatives leading the charge and making the argument he's disqualified right now. They've surprised me before. Potentially they'll surprise me again. But if I had to guess, I would say no. In fact, I think the lawsuits might struggle to even be heard because they'll be like, who has standing? We don't even know who has standing. But even if we get past the standing problem, then they might say, like I was telling you, like, no, you need an actual conviction for an insurrection-related crime to make it so that they can't run for office. But I don't know. Look, I'll say this. The interpretation that they're going with, I don't find it totally unreasonable. I don't find it irrational. I think it's a somewhat reasonable way to read this. But at the same time, I also just struggle in thinking that this is going to be the way they take him out. I think it's much more likely that, a conviction over the classified documents case, that'll actually take him out of the ballgame because he'll be behind bars. Hopefully the timeline's fast enough where that happens before the general election. But I have a hard time believing that this is going to be the thing that takes him down. But I mean, credit to these conservative judges for at least being principled, right? These conservative legal scholars for saying, I think that's the plain face reading and this is what I'm going to argue for. And I think there will be legal challenges. Okay, God bless. I guess we'll find out together. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.